Welcome to Father and Son. Welcome to you, Tom.
Morning, Dad.
What is it, Thursday morning, one day after Australia Day and one day after Nadal got beaten. He broke down last night. Means Federer looks like he's a certainty to win the Australian Open.
Yeah, I was surprised Nadal actually played on because he was clearly injured. It turns out he's hurt his hamstring, and I would have thought, being a professional athlete, if he knew he was going to lose, he should just pull out, much as one of the Williams sisters did. But, all credit to him. When he played on and he congratulated his opponent, and his opponent, who's a fellow Spaniard, knew that Nadal was injured.
Were you watching it?
I did watch a bit of it, yes.
Oh, why don't you watch the cricket? It's much more interesting.
Well,
England beat Australia on Australia Day.
I don't know if I'd call that
one-day series. Well, I suppose the major issue now is that the Prime Minister this morning has announced this mates levy. Mates, the leader of the opposition said, Tony Abbott, mates don't tax each other, do they?
No, although to be fair,
has she announced how much the tax will be?
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be 0.5%, and it will be levied on top of the Medicare levy. Now, to be fair to the Prime Minister, under the previous Howard government, there were quite a few levies. There was one for sugarcane growers, dairy farmers, the gun buyback after the Port Arthur massacre, and I think even East Timor in 1999. So the Howard government wasn't averse to levies. I'm completely against them. I mean, governments raise taxes through a variety of means, and it all goes into one giant pot normally, and out of each state determine how they're going to spend the nation's money. You don't need to raise a specific levy to fund a specific event. And here's the other thing: that most people who are going to have to pay the levy, the middle class people, probably have a house mortgage, right? Yes. So effectively, by taking some of their income, you're forcing them to borrow more at the mortgage rate.
Yes.
Now, most of us pay a mortgage rate 7.5% to 8% at the moment. The federal government can borrow money more cheaply than everybody else. Yes. So if they're asking people to fund via their mortgage as a levy, when the government can borrow the same amount of money more cheaply, it's just stupidity.
Without putting pressure on all the individual people.
Well, I mean,
we know costs are going to go up.
Look, food prices are already going up. Right. Interest rates are probably going to go up later in the year. Yeah. Remember that we've all forgotten to talk about a carbon tax, which was to stop droughts, and now we've got a flood tax to deal with floods. Yeah. But I mean, how much can the average Australian bear? I think the flood levy is a dumb idea. The federal government should just allow the budget to stay in deficit a year longer. Pay for it in the normal course of business and be done.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think no doubt the opposition will really take it up to the government when when Parliament resumes. Is it clear what the independents and the Greens are saying on this matter?
No, well, it's not. This is the other thing that's already emerged this morning, is that Rob Oakeshott has said he doesn't know what he thinks. Tony Windsor says he thinks it's a good idea, but he's not 100% sure. You only need one of the independents to say, you know what, I'm not going to vote for this, when therefore the government won't be able to pass it. So, it's by no means certain. And again, if the government announces something like this and they can't get it through Parliament, well,
it makes it look stupid.
It makes it look stupid and brings forward, a potential election.
I think, what's happened, we've known this is going to go on. Very little stuff is going to get through the Parliament, I think. And I don't think the independents want to go to another election. So
well, they don't. No, that's true.
They might stop this legislation.
It's just that it just seems so dumb. I mean, the government should have learnt from the mining tax that announcing a new tax for whatever reason at the moment is just not good politics. It's not what people want. Even President Obama in the State of the Union last night, which is his very important address to the Congress and the American people, it's a rather dubious piece of economic thinking, but they're going to cut corporate taxes in America to improve the competitiveness of American business. Now, they have a budget deficit problem many, many times, even on a sort of pro-rata basis, many times worse than Australia's. And yet he's saying, let's cut taxes, not increase them.
Yeah, well, they don't seem to care what their budget deficit is.
They just say, oh, it doesn't matter anymore. Yeah. Anyway, I think it's a silly idea. It's by no means guaranteed to pass Parliament, and it will be politically very, very unpopular, and so it should be.
Well, on a lighter note, Tom, yesterday was the 125th running of the Hanging Rock Cup. 10,000 people turned up, and the kangaroos went onto the track. So they stopped, they delayed the first race, and they sort of shot the kangaroos off. They didn't shoot them, that's what they should have done. They moved them off. And then all of a sudden another 3 or 4 came on, and they couldn't get them out of the track. They jumped over one part of the track where the fence is low, so they had to cancel the whole meeting. Quite staggering when you think about it.
I saw those pictures and I was reminded of a story you used to tell Americans years ago, just to have fun with them, to say, oh yes, in Australia we don't have horse racing, we have kangaroo racing.
Well, Americans ask very dumb questions. When I lived there in 69 and 70, you're a little whippersnapper. That's what they used to say, do you have horse racing in Australia? Well, what a dumb thing to say. Farlap's probably one of the greatest horses of all time. And I say, oh no, we don't. We have kangaroo racing and we give them like running around a dog track. Well, they all believed it.
I know, and so I just wonder whether some Americans had seen these pictures of the hanging rock races with kangaroos on the track, they probably say, oh, that's normal, that's what Australians do.
That wasn't the only highlight of the picnic races yesterday. Balnarring had their meeting on, and after the running of the Balnarring Cup or whatever it was, the next race they put out an emergency call. The starting thing had broken and they needed a welder. The starting gates wouldn't open, so they out on the loudspeaker they asked for a welder and did he have his equipment? Sure enough, somebody did, and they started the next race a bit late, but the program went on.
Well, I must say, having spent a bit of time on the Mornington Peninsula myself, when the surf is up, you find vans full of equipment. Usually they've got Telstra or something written on the side of them as well, outside the car park. And it doesn't surprise me that there was a tradesman at the races yesterday.
I agree. Anything else in the news?
Well, there's a couple of interesting topics. I saw a very funny story out of Italy that an Italian woman who got married just a month ago is already filing for divorce. And the reason is that her husband, when they went on their honeymoon, brought his mother along with him. And his wife, after several weeks of holiday or honeymooning with the mother-in-law, decided that this man was not for her. You would have thought that was a pretty obvious
decision. The only news about marriage and what's going on is Berlusconi. He seems to be having a hell of a great time with all the young girls and the prostitutes, and his popularity keeps rising.
Well, there's something about Europeans. I mean, it's the same in France. That if you didn't have a mistress and maybe a few extra children by your mistress, the French people would probably think that odd. When François Mitterrand died, that on one side of his coffin was his official family, and on the other side was his mistress and 2 or 3 children, and no one saw that as strange there. So.
No. All right, well that's it for this week. We'll see you all next week.